Good afternoon. My name is Tracy Kimberley. I am a wife, a daughter, and I'm a mum of 4. I have 2 girls and 2 boys. I'm a Libran. I love balance, so it's perfect. On the 25th of August 2016, the next couple of photos are actually going to be a little bit raw. You can hear in my voice because I'm already ready for these photos, so if you don't want to look, that's okay. On the 25th of August 2016, our lives changed drastically. Our daughter Ashley was rushed to hospital. She was in ketoacidosis and was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and we knew nothing about it. Days following her diagnosis, we were told so much information. However, looking back, nothing truly helped us actually understand what our daughter had, and we felt completely lost as parents, not just with a type 1 diabetic, but as parents as a whole with 4 children. The worst part was that I was told, "Now Tracy, don't you go and cut anything like carbs out of her diet. Carbs are important for diabetics because they need insulin, so therefore they need carbs." From her hospital dietitian, make sure her calories come from carbs because we don't have the insulin to deal with protein and fat. Other things were said from specialists, doctors, nurses. But the one thing that really stuck with me and I really, really didn't like was let her eat anything she wants and as much as she wants. Just give her the insulin to deal with it. I remember looking up at the dietitian as she was packing up to walk out the door. And I said to her, "But by doing that, aren't you essentially giving her type 2 diabetes?" She laughed at me, packed her stuff up, turned around and looked and said, "Tracy, darling, she's got type 1. She can't get type 2. And I thought to myself then, okay, I'm dealing with people who have no clue about diet and no clue about diabetes. Where am I going to learn anything about what my daughter has? About 3 weeks after diagnosis, I walked past Ashley's room. It was about 11:30 at night. An hour and a half before that, we'd checked her like we're supposed to. You check before you go to bed. She was at perfect levels. She was about 7. For us at that stage, 7 was perfect. I then at 11:30 got up and I had this awful, awful feeling. I said to my husband, "I'm just going to go check her." Now, my husband's a software engineer. He loves data, he loves statistics, and he loves rules. He said to me, "I've checked her at 10 o'clock. The rules say I've got the alarm set for 1 o'clock. And I said, I need to test her now. And when I went in to test her, I walked in and she was at 1.2. This was an hour and a half after she was at 7. 1.2 is not good. I kept calm. I corrected her. We got through it. It was about 12:30. She finally was able to go to sleep. I don't think I've mentioned, but Ashley was 11 at this stage. I shut her door and I slid down the wall. I was a mess. I cried. I was shaking. And I just didn't know how I was going to go on living like this, being a mother of a type 1 diabetic and 3 other children. The next day, I received an email from my father with a link to a low-carb Down Under talk, and it happened to be Dr. Troy Stapleton, who I've already given a really big hug to. Hope had finally been restored, and a hunger to learn and grow. We started the whole family on low-carb, high-fat. Ashley's blood sugar levels improved, her learning at school improved, our lives improved, and then, to our disappointment, Ashley's HbA1c went up to 8.2 from 7.3 at diagnosis. We were ripped apart at our endocrinologist appointment. All I remember asking is, how do I give insulin, or how do I give more insulin at mealtimes when her carbs are minimal? No one would answer me. And the worst thing is the endocrinologist wanted to lower her basal insulin to 4 when we were at 7, but our figures were going up. And I knew, because there was another little girl diagnosed the same time as Ashley, she was on 20 units of basal insulin on a 24-hour period, and we were at 7, going down to 4, and our HbA1c was going up. Nothing was adding up. Nothing made sense. But what I did know is I needed to understand insulin and what it's really needed for in the body, because clearly it isn't needed for just carbohydrates and food. We kept up low carb, high fat, and for a year I fought for knowledge, and finally I found a GP who was willing to support us. By this time, Ashley's HbA1c was up to 9. Our GP recommended that we split Ashley's basal dose and increase her overall basal, which worked. And we used a ratio of her weight and her age, and we came up with a figure for basal and split it, so she was having an injection every 12 hours. After a little while, I think it was about 2, almost 3 months, her HbA1c came down to 7.8. We were still laughed at and attacked and bullied at our next endocrinologist appointment because we had gone to a GP. What do they know? They're not specialists, so you should stay with the hospital. My response was, at least they're helping me and teaching me. That didn't really go down very well. So no one would teach me about dosage, about insulin. Imagine what her HbA1c would have been if we weren't low carb, high fat. Yeah, I don't want to think about it, so let's not. This January, I watched another YouTube interview by Mike Mutzel, who runs High Intensity Health in America, thanks to my dad. He was interviewing a type 1 diabetes specialist and a type 1 herself. Dr. Jody Stanislaw. In our first appointment with her via Skype, we learnt about basal insulin, and I still smile so big when I know, and I remember back to my first appointment, and how it is needed and what it does in the body, how it works, how much Ashley's body needs. We also learn about how to administer rapid-acting insulin before meals, during meals, any time actually, and how to administer it more effectively. A fortnight later, we had our second appointment and learnt about reasons for highs and lows. Oh, and in that first fortnight, I actually had full whole night sleeps, and so did my husband. No alarms, no spiking blood glucose levels. Ashley was waking up in the morning between 4 and 5 blood glucose level instead of 15 or 16. By the time we had our third session with Dr. Jody, our HbA1c was down to 6.6. We had dropped a whole percentage in just a very short time. By the 6-month mark, having learnt from Dr. Jody about insulin, the body, type 1 diabetes, and so much more, Ashley now is at 5.8 HbA1c. This result is despite some very stubborn things in the body, like growth hormones, puberty, stress, school, bullies, exams. They all can cause insulin resistance. We are no longer scared of insulin, and we know how to dose for her daily needs. We aren't perfect, but we're pretty damn close. I asked Ashley before I came here, if you could tell people here one thing, what would it be? And she said, Mum, you've taught me heaps about food. I have a great understanding about food. I know what's real food. I know what's healthy. But having snacks and some treats make me feel happy and make me feel a part of life. Things like birthday parties, birthdays, and dessert. Yes, my job is to guide her and all my children and help them understand what is right. And yes, this lifestyle isn't about changing what you eat into a low-carb, high-fat version. But having some substitutions helps us to enjoy life, enjoy this way of living while being around people who are not. That's my babies with all their birthday cakes. They're all low-carb, high-fat, Actually, I'd call them probably fat bombs because there's so much butter in each of them. There is so little awareness about type 1 diabetes in schools, preschools, and at birth. I've had 4 children, and not in one of my, I think, Johnson & Johnson's baby bounty bags was there anything about type 1 diabetes. Parents and teachers are taught a lot about meningitis, meningococcal, chickenpox, asthma, anaphylaxis, not type 1 diabetes. We need to make sure that the public, especially our schools, are aware of the signs and symptoms of pre-diagnosis. We need to help educate parents of T1Ds and T1Ds themselves about their bodies, sugar, carbohydrates, and the most of all, the equal importance of diet and insulin as a tool. We also need to better educate medical professionals about nutrition and the role of diet in managing T1D. My greatest desire is for nobody to have to fight for information like we have had to, and so their energy can be put into better use, helping themselves and helping anyone with T1D under their care to enjoy the fullest life possible. I made a promise to my daughter when she was in hospital, and there's a few people in this room who are a part of that promise. They don't know it just yet, but Dr. Jake Kushner, Dr. Troy Stapleton, and the beautiful Jessica Turton. And there's a lot of other people who are a part of this promise. When my daughter woke up from being administered to hospital, she was laying in my arms, and I said to her, "Darling, I'm not just going to keep you alive. I'm going to give you a life." Thank you.